Following the collapse of the Roman Empire in 476, Europe endured centuries of turmoil, as different people battled for supremacy. Order was not restored until the rise of Charlemagne. His coronation as emperor in 800 signaled the start of a new era. Origins and influences. The term, Carolingian, derives from Charlemagne, 742 to 814, who became king of the Franks in 768 and was crowned the first Holy Roman Emperor in 800. The name Charlemagne is derived from the Latin word for Charles, Carolus, and means Charles the Great. His use of this title showed his ambition to revive the lost glories of Rome and assume the leadership of Christendom. These ambitious aims could not be achieved by military prowess alone. Charlemagne introduced sweeping political and economic reforms, as well as a far-ranging revival of learning. The effects of his policies were felt long after his death, and the Carolingian epoch lasted until around 900. Subjects. With regards to the visual arts, Charlemagne made a deliberate effort to build on the achievements of classical and early Christian art, while also keeping abreast of the latest developments in the Eastern Empire. Some notable frescoes survive at Auxerre and Mustère, along with a fine mosaic at Germany-Press, but the best evidence comes from illuminated manuscripts t. The most original examples of these were the illuminated manuscripts produced at the monastic workshops in Reims. Arguably, though, the most crucial innovation in manuscript production relates to its script. By Charlemagne's time, the existing Merovingian form had become virtually unreadable. In its place, he promoted a new version, the Carolingian minuscule. Developed at the Palace School in Aachen, this lettering was so clear that it became the basis of many modern typescripts. The Carolingians produced no monumental sculpture, but the quality of their small-scale work was extremely high. Ivory carvers and goldsmiths, in particular, created some exquisite pieces. The ivory carvers specialized in intricate book covers, while the finest metalwork was made to adorn the high altar. Otto II from the Epistles of St. Gregory, produced in Trier, this shows Otto receiving homage from the 4 provinces of his empire. C. 983 Vellum, 27x20 cm, Musée Condé, Chantilly, France. Carolingian manuscripts. Europe, 8th to 10th centuries. Carolingian manuscripts provide one of the chief legacies of the age. As with other aspects of the revival, the key sources were classical and Byzantine. This did not produce a recognizable Carolingian style, however, as different centers developed variations. The opulent Gottschalk Evangelistery, for example, was stiff, with its text written in letters of gold and silver on purple vellum. By contrast, the illustrations in the Ebo Gospels had an intense, almost frenzied appearance, while the images in the Utrecht Psalter, arguably the greatest of all Carolingian manuscripts, were dynamic and expressive. Saint Mark, the sketchy style of this manuscript commissioned by Ebo, Archbishop of Reims, was typical of the manuscripts produced by the School of Reims. Ebo Gospels, C816-35, vellum, animal skin parchment, 18x14 cm, Bibliothèque Municipale, Épernay, France. CLOSERIAC. Divine inspiration. While he is writing his Gospel, Mark looks upwards to the winged lion, his traditional symbol for divine inspiration. The lion is an apocalyptic beast, described in the Book of Revelation. Ivory. France, 8th to 10th centuries. Ivory carving was the most popular form of sculpture during the Carolingian era. The material had been used for luxury items since ancient times, and local craftsmen drew inspiration from both classical and Byzantine models. The vast majority of the carvings were rectangular plaques, which were used as centerpieces on book covers. Because of the close links with manuscript production, the principal workshops for both art forms were frequently located in the same vicinity, in places such as Tours and Metz. In addition, the scenes portrayed on the ivories were often loosely based on manuscript illustrations. Saint Gregory, one of the Fathers of the Church, c. 540-604, copies of Saint Gregory's writings were frequently produced. This ivory may have formed part of a book cover for one such manuscript. 850-875, ivory, Kunsthistorisches Museum, Vienna, Austria. After Charlemagne's death, the Holy Roman Empire rapidly disintegrated. Its glories were only revived in the following century, when Otto the Great came to power. During his reign, and those of his German successors, imperial art regained much of its luster. The Ottonian era takes its name from Otto the Great, who became king of the Germans in 936 and was crowned Holy Roman Emperor in 962. His reign was followed by those of Otto II, 973 to 83, and Otto I, 996-1002, but the scope of the term extends beyond this, covering most of the 11th century. Origins and influences. The Ottonian style was a cocktail of many different influences. There was a conscious attempt to recapture the achievements of the Carolingian era and, as a logical extension of this, a desire to echo the grandeur of classical and late antique models. At the same time, the sheer volume of ecclesiastical patronage led to a reawakening of interest in early Christian art. Finally, there were strong cultural links with the Byzantine Empire. These reached a peak during the time of Otto II, who married Theophanu, a Byzantine princess. Although imperial support was important, the outstanding patrons of the age were powerful clerics, men such as Archbishop Gero of Cologne, who commissioned the finest monumental sculpture of the period, Archbishop Egbert of Trier, who ordered several major manuscripts, among them the Epistles of St. Gregory, and Bernward of Hildesheim, who is said to have done metalwork himself. Canonized in 1192, he later became the patron saint of goldsmiths. Subjects. In many areas, Ottonian craftsmen followed a similar path to their Carolingian predecessors. Ivory relief carvings remained popular, the vast majority depicting religious subjects, many of them produced in the flourishing workshops at Echternach and Reichenau. However, the growing interest in large-scale sculpture, epitomized by the Gero crucifix and the bronze doors at Hildesheim, marked a significant departure from Carolingian tradition. Together with Ottonian manuscripts, they provide hints of the Romanesque style that was to follow. Otto II from the Epistles of St. Gregory, produced in Trier, this shows Otto receiving homage from the four provinces of his empire. C. 983 Vellum, 27x20 cm, Musée Condé, Chantilly, France. Ottonian. Bronze casting. Germany, 11th century. Ottonian craftsmen achieved marked advances in the field of sculpture, most notably through their revival of bronze casting with the lost wax method, casting with a wax mold. The two most celebrated examples were commissioned by Bernward of Hildesheim, c. 960-1022, for the local church of St. Michael. These consisted of a bronze column, which served as a gigantic candlestick and was loosely based on Trajan's column in Rome, and a magnificent pair of doors, decorated with relief carvings of scenes from the scriptures, adapted from illustrations in illuminated manuscripts. Door from Hildesheim Cathedral, detail. The door was commissioned by Archbishop Bernward, the former tutor of Otto III. The Adoration of the Magi is depicted here, above the door knocker. 1015 bronze, width of panel 59 centimeters, Hildesheim, Germany. Jewelry, Germany, 11th century. Like the Carolingians before them, Ottonian craftsmen worked with precious materials. Some items were produced for imperial use. There is the celebrated crown of the Holy Roman Empire, bearing an inscription to Conrad LL, as well as jewelry belonging to his wife. The most lavish pieces, however, were generally destined for the church. Typical examples include Bible covers, ornate crosses, and receptacles for relics, all made out of gold and studded with gems, pearls, enamel, or cameos. Eagle brooch / his magnificent item was produced for Gisela of Swabia, 995-1043, the wife of Emperor Conrad IL. The eagle became a potent symbol for the Holy Roman Emperors. 11th century, gold, enamel, and precious stones, Mittelrheinisches Landesmuseum, Mainz, Germany. Germany, 10th to 11th centuries. Although few wall paintings have survived from the Ottonian era, some manuscripts have survived. These were created and preserved at the major monastic centers, such as Trier, Echternach, Reichenau, and Cologne. The miniatures themselves betray a number of different influences, most notably Byzantine, late antique, and Carolingian. From these diverse sources, Ottonian artists developed their own, distinctive style. They focused primarily on human figures, restricting background details to a minimum. These figures were often stylized, with slender, elongated bodies, and highly expressive, making expansive gestures with their large hands. Germany the Ascension, Liber Evangelicorum. Ottonian illuminators shifted their emphasis from the Old to the New Testament. Gospel books and periscopes, extracts from the Gospels, became the most popular form of manuscript. Here, Christ ascends in a golden mandorla, an almond-shaped halo. 10th century, painting on vellum, 35.5 x 25.4 centimeters. Biblioteca Medici Laurentian, Florence, Italy. The Viking Age blossomed in Scandinavia in the Middle Ages, from around 800 to 1050. Northern craftsmen developed a form of animal decoration, which influenced neighboring cultures and became an important element of the Romanesque style. Origins and influences. Viking is a collective name for the seafaring people of Scandinavia, who had a devastating impact on Northern Europe during the medieval period. Although the Vikings are most famous as pirates and marauders, their artistic style came about through commercial contacts. Scandinavian seamen regularly traveled to Russia and Constantinople, building up a rich trade in precious metals, fur, and tusks. In the process, they became influenced by Carolingian, Byzantine, and Celtic culture. In its most basic form, Viking decoration consisted of interlacing plants and animals. Over the centuries, there were subtle developments. In chronological order, the main phases are known as Oseberg, Bor, Jelling, Mammon, Ringerike, and Inns. Most of these took their names from finds at important burial sites. Subjects. Throughout the period, the most common motifs were stylized animals. One of these animals was a ribbon-shaped beast, which cannot be linked to any existing with real certainty. However, lions and snakes were frequently featured, along with some birds, chiefly hawks, ravens, and eagles. More rarely, there were depictions of horses and towards the end of the period, dragons. Human figures were even scarcer, although some examples can be found. In most cases, the animal's purpose seems to be purely ornamental. However, attempts have been made to look for deeper symbolic meanings, either by linking the designs with episodes from the Viking sagas or the Bible. The most convincing example is the image of a fight between a lion and a snake, which can be seen on several Christian memorials. This has been interpreted as a symbolic struggle between good and evil. The Oseberg ship excavated in 1904, now in the Viking Ship Museum Oslo, still preserved remains of this 22x5m wooden ship were originally used for the burial of a high-ranking female, perhaps Queen Asa. Viking art. Metalwork. Scandinavia, C800 C1050. The earliest Scandinavian metal objects known to us were made around 1500 BC, but there seems to have been no sustained practice of metalworking until C550 C. From this later period, an impressive array of shields, helmets, and swords has been unearthed from graves, notably at Vendel and Valsgard. Both in their decoration and overall design, these have strong affinities with weaponry found at the Anglo-Saxon burial site, Sutton Hoo, see opposite. Helmet. From the Vendel treasure in the 1880s, archaeologists found a rich array of weaponry in a group of burials at Vendel, in the Swedish province of Uppland. C600 C, iron and bronze, Historiska Museet, Stockholm, Sweden. Carving. Scandinavia, C800 C1050. During the early Middle Ages, the Vikings built up extensive trading contacts with Russia and the East. Influenced by these contacts, their craftsmen developed a distinctive style of design using interlacing animals, with biting snakes and monsters. Over the years, a number of different variants evolved, all of which featured similar, densely entwined patterns. The style itself was extremely versatile. Although usually associated with wood carving, it has been found on objects made of stone, bone, and metal. The designs were also used on military equipment, such as weaponry and longships, inside churches, and on runestones, memory stones, placed by graves of warriors. Figurehead of the Oseberg longship G decorations in Tisbro show a monstrous head formed from patterns of interlace. 9th century, wood, Viking ship museum, Oslo. The Kamen casket copy. The original casket was housed in Kamen Cathedral, Pomerania, but was destroyed during World War I. C1000 C, wood, Elkhorn bronze, 63 by 25.9 centimeters, Nationalmuseet, Denmark. CLOSRIC. Mammon style. The combination of stylized animals with intricate interlacing is typical of Mammon decoration. North portal / his carving, with its mixophantwined ribbon snakes and dragons, has given its name to versatile form of decoration known as ins. The panel was transferred from an earlier painting. C 1050-1100, wood, unstaved church, near Lustreford, Norway. The British Isles did not escape the turmoil that followed the collapse of the Roman Empire. Shiploads of settlers from across the North Sea sailed there, bringing a range of cultural influences. These merged with local styles to create new artistic trends. Anglo-Saxons. Many of the newcomers originated from Germany or Scandinavia. The Angles hailed from the southern part of the Danish peninsula and settled along the east coast, from Northumbria to Essex. The Saxons were Germanic and have left their mark in local place names, such as Essex, East Saxons, Wessex, and Sussex. The first of the incomers were brought across by the Romans, to serve as mercenaries against the Picts and Scots, but full-scale migration began in the 4th century. The finds at Sutton, who near the coast in southeast England, have tended to overshadow other Anglo-Saxon achievements. In the north, sculptors produced some outstanding stonework. Most noteworthy are the high crosses of Ruthwell and Bewcastle, which combine Germanic decoration with imposing figures. The Anglo-Saxons also developed an impressive tradition in manuscript illumination. This owes its fame to the success of the Winchester School, which flourished in the 10th century. Their illustrations are notable for their large, ornate borders. Celts. The Celts had migrated to Britain a few centuries before the arrival of the Romans, but the arrival of Germanic tribes pushed them further west, until their strongholds were in Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and Cornwall. Their art survived these disruptions, bridging the transition from paganism to Christianity. This is most obvious from their metalwork tea. Head design cinthier weaponry and horse trappings were still being used, centuries later, on chalices, croziers, and shrines. In their stonework and manuscripts, the Christian Celts broke new ground. In Ireland, they developed a style of monumental high cross, lavishly decorated with biblical scenes. And manuscripts like the Book of Kells, see pages 70-71, won much admiration. Celtic cross. Some believe that the wheel motif on Celtic crosses, such as this 10th century Irish example, refers to the sun, others that it represents a halo. Anglo-Saxon and Celtic art. Anglo-Saxon. Britain, late 4th century c. 1066. When the Roman hold on Britain began to crumble, the country was invaded by successive waves of Germanic migrants. These included, among others, Angles, Saxons, Jutes, and Frisians, who have become known collectively as Anglo-Saxons. The majority of their artworks were produced in Christian workshops, although the ship burial at Sutton, who contains some outstanding exceptions, th. East site can probably be linked with Redwald, died c. 627, an East Anglian king who is said to have erected both Christian and pagan altars. Discovered in 1939, Sutton, who contained a veritable treasury of gold buckles, silver bowls, decorated weaponry, and lavish symbols of royal authority. The Alfred jewel made for Alfred the Great. This is thought to be an estelle, a pointer for following the text of a manuscript. The figure may represent the sense of sight. Sth century, gold, rock crystal, and enamel, length 6.2 centimeters, Ashmolean Museum, Oxford, UK. Helmet from the Sutton, whose ship burial. The helmet is decorated with interlacing and heroic scenes, while the face mask is adorned with a dragon. C625-30C, iron and gilt bronze. Height 31.8 centimeters, British Museum, London, UK. Insular Celtic. Britain, c. 500 BC c. 1000 C. In the British Isles, the Celtic style proved highly durable, surviving long into the Christian era. This was possible, as their designs had long been composed of abstract patterns and stylized animals. Depictions of the gods appear to have been rare, although as the Christians were very systematic about destroying idols, there may have been more than we can surmise from the surviving record. As a result, Christian artists were able to borrow some elements from old, pagan artifacts, adapting them for use in their gospel books, their stone crosses, and their metalwork. In the crucifixion plaque below, for example, the garments of Christ and the angels, as well as the cross itself, are adorned with Celtic spirals and interlacing. St. John's crucifixion plaque discovered near Athlone. This was probably XN once attached to the cover of an early gospel book late 7th century, gilt bronze, height 21 centimeters, National Museum of Ireland, Dublin, Ireland. The Battersea shield, this beautiful, but flimsy shield covering, was designed for ceremonial purposes. It was placed in the Thames as an offering. 350-50 BC, bronze with enamel inlay, length 77.5 centimeters, British Museum, London, UK. Closer look. Playful design. The asterisk / curvilinear patterns are similar J\@TL to continental, Celtic designs, while the central boss is raised, to accommodate the hand grip underneath. Figurative forms of stylized birds are concealed amid the swirling lines. Folio 34 from the Book of Kelly, Artist Unknown, c. 800, vellum illuminated manuscript, 33/25 centimeter, Old Library, Trinity College, Dublin, Ireland. CLOSERIAC. The Book of Kells. The Book of Kells is one of the crowning achievements of Celtic art, a masterpiece of sumptuous decoration. It is a gospel book, a manuscript that consists principally of the four gospels. This format was originally devised for missionaries, as the shorter text was easier to transport than a complete Bible. The Kells manuscript, however, was meant for display. It is lavishly illustrated with stunning calligraphy, depictions of the four evangelists, and biblical scenes. These decorations had a practical purpose. They helped the priest to find his way around a text that, as yet, had no chapters or verses, but they were also designed to dazzle potential converts. Composition. This magnificent example of Celtic calligraphy is generally known as the monogram page. It represents just 3 Latin words, Christi autem gene ratio. Now the birth of Jesus Christ. Matthew 1:18. Indeed, most of the page is taken up with 2 characters. These form the Chiro, the first 2 letters of Christ's name in Greek, which were traditionally represented by XP. Beneath this, in much smaller letters, the scribe continues with H, the standard contraction for autumn, and gene ratio. Christ's monogram was a potent symbol in early Christian art. Virgin and child. The manuscript boasts a unique blend of styles. The Virgin, with her maphorion Greek robe, appears to be based on a Byzantine icon, while the beard tuggers to his right are typically Celtic. Evangelists. The symbols of the 4 evangelists, the authors of the Gospels, recur throughout the manuscript. Drawn from passages in Ezekiel and Revelation, they are a winged man, Matthew, a lion, Mark, an ox, Luke, and an eagle, John. Technique. Manuscripts of this kind were produced in a monastic workshop known as a scriptorium. The number of monks assigned to this task is unknown, although experts claim to have detected the hands of 3 different artists and 3 or 4 scribes. Animal hides were prepared, smoothed out, and then stretched to form the vellum, the fabric from which the book is made. Tiny holes were pricked into the surface, to mark out the writing area, while the artists would have tried out their compositions on wax tablets, before using the costly parchment. Materials. The manuscript was produced on vellum, a material made out of calfskin. In general, the hide of a single animal was enough for a double sheet of vellum, so around 200 calves would have been required for the Book of Kells. Pigments. The pigments came from a variety of natural sources. Some were available locally, red lead, chalk, and woad, while others had to be imported. These included pholium, pink, and kermes red, which was obtained from a Mediterranean insect. In context. Celtic style. Celtic design was remarkable for its adaptability. The swirling, curved lines that are so typical of the style were developed by pagan Celts from around the 5th century BC. Centuries later, Christian artists borrowed these motifs and used theming in their own work. Tara brooch complex interlacing was a feature of Celtic jewellery, metalwork, and manuscripts. 8th century, silver, gold, amber, and glass, National Museum of Ireland, Dublin. Story. Despite its lavish appearance, the manuscript was never completed, and its origins are uncertain. The likeliest scenario is that it was begun on the Scottish island of Lona, which headed a wealthy confederation of monasteries devoted to the teachings of Saint Columba. In the early 9th century, however, Lona was repeatedly raided by Vikings and the surviving monks were eventually forced to flee to Ireland, where they established a new home at Kells. Their abrupt departure may explain why work on the manuscript was abandoned. ATS and mice. A pair of mice are nibbling a communion wafer, while 2 cats stand on their tails. This is probably just a piece of whimsy, illustrating the difficulty controlling rodents. There is a similar scene on Muirdachas Cross at Monasterbus, also in Ireland. Human head. Celtic artists often used human heads as decorative flourishes on a wide variety of objects. They can be found, for example, on the hilt of a sword, the ends of a torque metal collar, or on the clasp of a brooch. Otters and fish. Monastic painters love to add tiny, humorous details to their work. Some experts have looked for symbolic meanings in these, but they are often unconvincing. The fish, for example, is an ancient Christian symbol. Angels. 3 angels adorn the edge of a letter. The 2 on the left have L-shaped bodies, with tiny feet protruding from their tunics underneath the wings. They are shown here, as the page is close to the passages on the Annunciation and the Nativity.